South Sudan, where the whole communities live with nothing but faith.
Yes, bakunzi ba Umuduri Band TV, mwaramutse, mwiriwe, mumeze gute, mumeze neza?
Violated by lines they never drew. To every corner of the world, where fear has replaced freedom.
Nizere ko mumeze neza aho muri abadukurikira muri ahantu henshi hatandukanye, abadukurikira muri mu Burundi, mu Rwanda, ndetse kw'abo bantu bose bashobora kumva runo rurimi turiko turavuga nago rukaba rurimi rw'ikirundi.
War doesn't save us. War does not honor any god, any flag, or any.
Murazi ko duhora tuza ku Umuduri Band TV kugira ngo tuganire ku bintu biba biriko biravugwa hirya no hino, na cane cane twibanda mu kubaka amahoro, uburenganzira bwa muntu ndetse na demokarasi irambye, aho tuza turebera hamwe amakuru atandukanye ndetse twigishanya ku burenganzira bwa muntu nyene ndetse na demokarasi. Itariki 22 z'uku kwezi hari ibiganiro n'ibitekerezo byinshi ku ruhare rwa Leta Zunze Ubumwe za Amerika mu masezerano y'amahoro hagati ya Repubulika Iharanira Demokarasi ya Kongo n'u Rwanda. Ayo masezerano yiswe Washington Accord for Peace and Prosperity, akaba yarashizweho umukono muri Washington mu 2025 nyuma y'igihe kirekire y'intambara mu burasirazuba bwa Repubulika Demokarasi ya Kongo, harimo uruhare rw'umutwe wa M23 watumye haba injyane n'ubuzima butameze neza mu baturage. Ibyavuzwe na Amerika, ibyavuzwe na Amerika na bamwe mu bayobozi. Amerika yayoboye ibiganiro byo kugeza ku masezerano kuri Repubulika Demokarasi ya Kongo n'u Rwanda basizwe inyuma imvururu n'intambara mu karere k'ibiyaga bigari. Icyo gikorwa cyakunze kwitwa Washington Accord kandi cyari gifise intego yo guhagarika imirwano, gushimangira umutekano no gushika iterambere ry'ubukungu muri ako karere. Umuyobozi w'itegeko nshinga amategeko muri Amerika, Chris Smith, yavuze ko ayo masezerano ari intambwe idasanzwe ku mateka yo gushaka amahoro hagati ya Kongo n'u Rwanda. Amerika yanenze ibyo yabonaga ko u Rwanda cyangwa umutwe wa M23 byaba byararenze ku byo bemeranyijwe, aho umunyamisiri w'ububanyi n'amahanga wa Amerika Marco Rubio yavuze ko bazafata ingamba ku byo babona nk'ihohoterwa y'amasezerano.
This is not a dream. This is a mission. And today we choose it.
Ibibazo n'imbogamizi. Ibibazo n'imbogamizi nyuma yo gusinya amasezerano. Nubwo ibyo byemeranyijwe byari bigamije amahoro, hari amakuru avuga ko Perezida wa Repubulika Demokarasi ya Kongo yavuze ko hari ibyo Rwanda bishinjwaga ko byarenze ku masezerano, birimo gukoresha intwaro mu bice by'icyo gihugu, ibintu byateje amakimbirane hagati y'impande zombi. Hari umutwe wa M23 washatse gufata umujyi wa Uvira muri RDC, ndetse hari n'inkuru zitandukanye zivuga ko intambara zikomeje mu bice bimwe nubwo hari ibikorwa byo kugarura umutekano.
Ladies and gentlemen, brother and sister supporters of our
uko bashatse kuvuga ku ruhare rwa Amerika.
today.
Amerika si yo nyine yashyigikiye ibiganiro kuko hari n'abahuza baturutse ku yindi miryango mpuzamahanga na leta z'ibihugu bya Afurika, ariko uruhare rwa Amerika rwasobanuwe nk'urugero rw'ubufasha bw'ubutwererane mu gushakira amahoro ako karere amaze imyaka myinshi y'amakimbirane binyuze mu biganiro, gushigikira amasezerano n'ibitekerezo byo gukemura amakimbirane ku buryo budakoresheje intwaro.
Of Gaza, where children lean sounds of
Rero ibiganiro byabaye ku mugoroba, ngaha ari ku mugoroba saa 3 niho inama nshingamateka ya Amerika yakorana ivuga ku bibazo by'amasezerano y'u Rwanda na Kongo yo guhagarika intambara, uko byagenze inyuma y'ayo masezerano, mbega ibyakurikiye n'ibiki. Rero bariko baravuga yuko harenzwe ku masezerano yo guhagarika intambara, aho umutwe wa M23 wagiye ufata ibindi bice, aho bagiriza u Rwanda kandi kongera gufasha umutwe wa M23. Rero minisitiri bagiye babaza ibibazo bitandukanye, aho babajije ati mbega n'iryari abo bazafatirwa ibihano, ariko minisitiri w'ububanyi n'amahanga wa Amerika yababwiye ko ari ibihano biriko birategurwa ho bukera ibyo bihano bizasohoka kandi bikazaba ari ibihano bikomeye. Yavuze ko ari ibihano bikomeye kandi ari kubyitondera mu kubifata ari kubyitondera. Rero akavuga yuko umwanya n'umwanya ibyo bihano nyene bishobora kuzosohoka. Ngira ngo rero muri benshi bumva ururimi rw'icyongereza mbere no kundusha, ngiye kubumvisha kungene ibyo abaminisitiri bariko baravuga biri mu rurimi rw'icyongereza, ariko nizere ko abakurikira Umuduri Band TV mwese muri abantu basobanutse kandi bize amashure, muraza kumva ibyavugiwe mu nama nshingamateka ya Amerika, aho abaminisitiri bariko baravuga ku ruhare rwa Amerika gusinya amasezerano, ndetse bareba nuko amasezerano yagenze inyuma yo kuyasinya byagenze gute. Rero bakunzi bacu turasaba yuko mukurikira ko ibyo biganiro bya Amerika byari bimeze. Ibyo biganiro nyine iyo nama y'abaminisitiri
some consultations, but what is your response to criticism from Congolese opposition?
Cyongereza, ariko ndazi ko musobanutse muraza kumva byinshi byavugiwe mu iyo nama, aho bavuze kuri Kongo, aho bavuze kuri M23, ndetse n'ibihano bavuze ko bagiye gufatira u Rwanda ndetse na M23.
The AU do some consultations, but what is your response to criticism from Congolese opposition and civil society figures, including Nobel laureate Denis Mukwege, that the US-backed peace process has effectively rewarded Rwanda with pledges of US investment for attacking DRC?
Thank you for that. So we do continue to engage civil society, especially at our embassy level. Our embassies are quite engaged with local groups, especially in designing the regional economic integration framework. They were consulting a variety of groups in developing that key economic aspect of these agreements. And again, we do look to the African Union to play an integral role in bringing civil society voices to the forefront in implementation. We know that's critical to peace, and we really hope that that will be one of the deliverables that the AU is able to step in on.
Spoken to would disagree with the assessment that they have been engaged in this process. So I would urge you to rectify that situation, because the Congolese have, been privy to 3 decades of failed peace agreements. And I think those civil society groups on the ground know what's needed to actually be able to make this durable. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing today, and thank you to our witness for being here. Appreciate your testimony. I've had the privilege of visiting the African continent on multiple congressional delegations since I've been in Congress my time here, including recently DRC, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda in the area. During these visits, nearly all of my conversations have centered around security and economic growth. And thanks to the leadership of President Trump and Secretary Rubio, that's exactly what the Washington Accords, peace and prosperity, sets the foundation for this to take place in the DRC. Now that the agreement is signed, the implementation must be executed thoughtfully and with buy-in from all of our regional partners. Key to lasting peace is economic security, right? But you can't have economic security until you have some level of physical security as well, because people, outside nations are not going to come in and invest in an area where it's too hostile and too dangerous to operate. So that's just really going to be key in all of this. A plan that I've discussed with multiple heads of state in the area, including Rwanda and DRC, is that the region could create an economic framework where neighboring countries would manage separate segments of the critical mineral supply chain coming from the eastern DRC. Now, I'm not suggesting that the DRC should give resources away. They belong to the DRC. But what I am suggesting is that if this becomes a situation where it's mutually beneficial for everyone to have peace in the region, because it's financially beneficial for everyone to have peace in the region, then I think that goes a long ways toward establishing lasting peace. And I've proposed multiple times that there should be agreement between the countries, and not just Rwanda and the DRC, but the DRC and Burundi, the DRC and Uganda, some of their neighbors, that everyone benefits from the trillions, the tens of trillions of dollars of rare earths that are currently in the eastern DRC. It's one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest, in the world with regards to some of these natural resources. So, if these could be mined, in the DRC and then refined or processed in the neighboring countries, everyone would have a vested interest in making sure that peace is maintained in the area. I also think that another area that's big here is that in order to get the physical security that we talked about, well, first off, let me just say that once that happens, another area that I've stressed really strongly is that the resources that come from this agreement down the road, if this were to take place, and some of this tremendous wealth were realized by the DRC and its neighboring countries, as I described, I think that it's absolutely critical that these resources have to be reinvested in the people of the DRC. As I described, I think that it's absolutely critical that these resources have to be reinvested in the people of the DRC, the infrastructure. They have to see their lives getting better based on these minerals, being processed and sold. I also think that it's going to be really key. We talked about the atrocities, and yes, there's been atrocities on both sides. I've read the intel. M23, Wazalando. There's been some atrocities across the board. It's been going on for a long time now, right? But I also maintain that M23 is an armed militia group. I don't think they're going to put their weapons down and start farming the next day. I think that there has to be a concerted effort by the DRC to take the Congolese members of the M23 and incorporate them into the broader security platform for the country. Whether that's enabling to be part of the military in some way, I'm not sure, but I do think that you have to have a plan for that as well. But my question for you, real quick, because I don't have much time left, I'm sorry, but is what is the Department of State doing right now to working? How are they working to implement such a framework that I was just described with regards to the economic and the physical security?
Great. Well, thank you so much, Congressman, for the opportunity to address that. The regional framework that you've described is exactly in line with what we have achieved with the Regional Economic Integration Framework signed between DRC and Rwanda. So that was a big incentive to participate in the peace process. Like you said, economic security and physical security do go together, and we won't have increased investment until we do have peace. So we are looking forward to helping the DRC and Rwanda implement the REEF, the Regional Economic economic integration framework, which seeks to strengthen cross-border collaboration on sectors like critical minerals, also energy, infrastructure, tourism, and public health. So we look forward to the implementation of that framework, especially once we make more progress toward real stability on the ground. And I do appreciate your note that we should be looking at Uganda and Burundi for inclusion in certain efforts related to that framework. I think we are certainly hoping to get to that stage, and I would love to discuss with you further what that might look like to ensure that all countries in the region do benefit from this deal that was signed between the DRC and Rwanda. If I could just address forward to having more conversations with you and your team about how we can support investment in the DRC and the region.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know this, I'm making it sound a lot easier than it actually is. There's been, this has been going on for decades now, this conflict. And, but I do think that at some point there have to set aside differences, and there has to be a way for M23 to reintegrate, and for everyone, including both sides of this conflict, to see that they are benefiting from what's going on with the vast mineral wealth there, that I think is ultimately the solution to this problem. But once again, I thank you for your time, and with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. For decades, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, has been trapped in a cycle of violence due to ethnic conflict between government actors, a variety of rebel groups, and foreign actors. Today, almost 15 million people in the DRC need humanitarian assistance, and almost 27 million people will face crisis or emergency levels of food insecurity in 2026. In December, Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi and Rwandan President Paul Kagame officially signed the U.S. brokered peace agreement and economic framework. The sustainability of this agreement is questionable, given that it prioritized economic benefit from extraction of critical minerals over building sustainable peace, excluded key actors impacted by the conflict, especially local civil society and Congolese women and girls, did not get involved in the influential destabilizing actors and parties to the conflict, such as the March 23rd movement, the M23. Over the last year, the administration terminated conflict and atrocity prevention and resolution programs in the country that advanced livelihoods and promoted stability around critical minerals, which has in turn undermined stability and threatened the success of the U.S.-led peace efforts. Furthermore, the reorganization of the State Department resulted in the elimination of key offices focused on conflict and atrocity prevention, such as the Bureau of Conflict and Stabilization Operation, CSO, and the Secretary's Office of Global Women's Issues. To successfully and sustainably address the drivers of violence and instability in the DRC, the Trump administration must support programs and incorporate diverse local stakeholders, strengthen capacity to prevent and resolve conflict, respond to atrocities, and tackle the disproportionate impact the long-running conflict has had on women and girls. On another note, I'd like to add the Trump administration is wrong for eliminating programs that have to deal with diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is the on-ramp to help resolve issues of conflict, as well as bring about racial justice, as well as promote women to inclusive leadership positions. I would ask you, to what extent has the African Affairs Bureau implemented conflict prevention and peace-building programs in the country to complement recent diplomacy surrounding DRC?
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. I would note that we do have many ongoing assistance programs, mostly with life-saving assistance being implemented in the DRC. Secretary Rubio has been clear that we will remain the largest donor of life-saving humanitarian assistance in the world, and we will use foreign assistance to support our strategic priorities. The DRC clearly is a strategic priority, and bringing stability and peace to the region is obviously a focus for President Trump. So we look forward to continuing those assistance programs. I would add that we continue to implement programs, including those which offer protection and medical services to women and girls, and other programs that focus on protecting vulnerable populations. So absolutely recognize that women and girls are under extreme threat in the Eastern DRC, and we will continue those protection efforts.
Is there any particular reason why the U.S.-backed peace plan was not inclusive as civil society, including women-led civil society, was not included in official talks?
Thank you so much for the chance to address that. So we did include civil society in consultations, especially around the regional economic integration framework, and we look forward to those conversations ongoing as we look at how to implement the framework and encourage investment in the region. And we are looking to the African Union to really step up in this lane and bring civil society voices to the forefront as they help us with the implementation of these agreements. So we look forward to speaking with those groups, especially in coordination with the AU.
And as we speak in closing, I find it rather curious that the President of the United States puts more bans on African countries, more bans on integrating Africa into the global economy, making more barriers between our great countries to participate. I thank you so much for your cooperation, participation. I yield back, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Olszewski.
Thank you to Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Jacobs for holding this hearing. Thank you to our witness for being here. Just a little bit of context for Congolese civilians living in the DRC. The real test of the Washington Accords is pretty simple. It's not whether the president declares there is peace. It's does life become safer, more dignified, and more economically secure in local communities. Today, more than 70% of Congolese civilians live in extreme poverty. More than 1,100 schools and learning sites have been damaged or turned into shelters, with over 1.6 million children out of school in all of Eastern DRC. Nearly 25 million are facing high levels of acute food insecurity. And since December 1st, at least 500,000 people, including over 100,000 children, have been newly displaced within South Kivu. So I just want to echo, I guess, the questions and the concerns, because despite these staggering numbers, we continue to hear from Congolese civil society leaders that they have been sidelined in the negotiations. And so it's not a specific question, but hopefully as a follow-up, Ms. Troutman, I'd love to learn more about specifically, now you say that they're being engaged. I want to hear specifically as a follow-up how that engagement has happened and what the plans are to continue, but I appreciate your commitment to that. I have a couple of questions I do want to get to while we're here today, and really grounded in the belief that policy should be grounded in the lived realities, the priorities, and the leadership of the Congolese communities themselves. Without it, we risk repeating the same top-down approach that has failed the Congolese people for 3 decades, no matter how strong the diplomatic support looks like from here in Washington. So my first question today is actually building on the local mining question. We know that the Strategic Partnership Agreement includes few requirements for local processing, environmental standards, and revenue sharing. I'm curious how the State Department will work to ensure that the wealth generated and produced by these resources, or U.S.-backed firms, will actually help drive local economic growth.
Thank you so much, Congressman, for the opportunity to address that question. We do want to be clear in our messaging that the U.S.-DRC Strategic Partnership Agreement is a big win for Americans and for the United States. It's also a big win for the DRC and the Congolese people. We worked very closely in coordination with President Tshisekedi and his government to develop this deal, and we are very excited about the implications it holds for the DRC's future. We do believe that under the deal, more U.S. companies will have access to investment opportunities in the DRC. We know that U.S. companies bring with them the highest operating standards worldwide, which will help with local skills transfer, local job creation, and develop more economic opportunities across the DRC. And we look forward to seeing those actualized as we implement the agreement. The agreement also includes commitments from the DRC to regulate and formalize the mining sector, so that will help formalize artisanal mining especially, which will help combat exploitation and abuse of local workers, and help the DRC people benefit from revenue streams from their resources.
So you all plan to be engaged in those conversations as they're producing that regulation?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then secondly, on child soldiers, we know that UNICEF reports that the recruitment and use of children by armed groups has increased by 60% in 2024 compared to the previous year. Additionally, the control of vast areas by armed groups in the eastern provinces of the DRC has entrenched instability, exacerbating the suffering of civilians. I'm curious how the U.S. government is supporting both country-led and partner efforts, including from agencies such as UNICEF, to stem the recruitment of children who would perpetuate this conflict and ensure even greater opportunity for those children. What active awards does the department have in the DRC that's working to address the needs of these vulnerable children?
Thank you so much for the chance to address that issue. So I would say we continue to raise the issue of child soldiers at the highest levels in our cooperation with the DRC government. Regulations related to the use of child soldiers obviously prevent a significant amount of security cooperation with countries that have been deemed to have this issue. So in signing the bilateral US DRC security memorandum of understanding that we established on December 4th as well, we've been clear that in order to implement, we do follow obviously US regulations, and the use of child soldiers continues to be of grave concern to us within DRC territory. So we will continue to work on that issue. And in terms of active awards, I can get back to you on specifics, but we do have awards that address the protection of children in vulnerable communities. So we do think that through providing these resources, hopefully children will have alternatives to joining these types of groups.
That'd be great. I look forward to that. Thank you for your time. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield.
I'd like to recognize Ms. Cherfilis McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much, Ms. Troutman, for being here today to answer our questions. My constituents have vocalized their desire to do more work with Africa, especially when it comes to business. So when this agreement came to fruition, many people were excited about the opportunities. Florida is a global trade gateway, home to major ports and logistic hubs, and increasingly connected U.S. markets to Africa. Stability between the DRC and Rwanda is essential for secure supply chain, responsible mining, material sourcing, and expanded two-way trade that benefits American workers and businesses. As Congress looks at President Trump's Washington Accords, it's important to assess how U.S. engagement can reinforce African-led peace efforts while also supporting economic integration and long-term regional stability. How is the United States working with Rwanda and DRC to advance cross-border trade, infrastructure, and material supply chains in ways that support peace and deliver measurable economic benefits?
Thank you so much, Congresswoman, for the chance to answer that question. The U.S. stands ready to help the DRC and Rwanda implement the regional economic integration framework that I mentioned. So the goal of this framework is to incentivize peace and stability by providing opportunities for the DRC and Rwanda to cooperate on cross-border projects. And we certainly are encouraging U.S. companies to invest in these projects, and we hope to highlight certain efforts that they might want to get involved in as this year progresses. We also hope that we can attract financing, possibly from our tools like DFC and EXIM, to support projects like this that will enforce stability and really bring economic opportunities to the region. I will say that we continue to emphasize that peace and stability is necessary for the DRC and Rwanda to take full advantage of the regional economic integration framework. So we do look forward to supporting and promoting these opportunities, but we do need to see compliance with the peace agreement first.
So do you have any specific incentives that you'll be using, mechanisms to support and encourage people to do business?
Sure. So we are committed to highlighting opportunities in the countries of the Great Lakes region and attracting U.S. support and investment. This could include events hosted in D.C. to connect U.S. companies and advertise these opportunities also to the DFC and EXIM, our financing tools, and connect them with representatives of host governments to advertise these opportunities. So that's something we'll continue to work on as the year progresses, and I would welcome any recommendations you might have from companies that are headquartered in your district.
And what do you believe is a realistic timeline for us to see this coming to fruition?
We certainly hope to see progress this year. We are moving forward on implementing the U.S. DRC Strategic Partnership Agreement already. We hope to have the first meeting of the Joint Steering Committee soon, which will discuss opportunities specifically in the DRC that U.S. companies might be able to invest in, and we certainly hope to host an event convening companies and governments to discuss opportunities under the Regional Economic Integration Framework. So certainly hope to see progress this year.
Wonderful. And what did the African Union facilitate, the talks that were happening in Togo? What did it realistically achieve?
Sure. So we're very grateful for the African Union's commitment to supporting the peace process. We were very grateful for their explicit support of the Washington Accords and also the Doha Framework Agreement. We think that their support underpinning both of these processes is absolutely crucial. The AU has operationalized 5 former heads of state to take leadership on certain aspects of the peace process. So as I mentioned, we certainly hope that this conference strengthened their mandate so that they can move out on efforts to incorporate more civil society voices, to elevate humanitarian issues, to help with an inter-Congolese national dialogue and things like that. So we certainly hope to see their mandate strengthened as we move forward this year.
So my last question, because we're extremely committed to the success of this accord, it's extremely important that Rwanda and DRC are successful, but also that our businesses can attach and be productive. So what do you need from Congress to give you the scaffolding for success?
Thank you very much for that support. I would say we welcome your ideas and your thoughts on which companies might be a good fit for investment under these frameworks. We certainly welcome that feedback, and especially as we do hopefully hold events in Washington, we would welcome participation. So I'll certainly keep in touch with your staff on future.
Now, are you only having events in DC? Because if you can come into Florida, we have great weather to have events. If we can lure you now. Yeah. San Diego's very nice also, but you want to come to Florida. We would love to host events. We've been doing a lot of events, doing business with Africa, and people love it. So whatever we can do to help support and move this initiative forward, we would love to do. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Just a few follow-up questions, and I'll yield to my ranking member. And I think Dr. Jackson had a question or two. I've read both of the statements that have been submitted by the respective countries. They're very, very good and comprehensive. They both start out from the onset, the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, extends its deep thanks to the United States of America and President Donald Trump for facilitating the December 25th Peace and Prosperity Agreement. For the first time in history, they write, a U.S. president has taken a personal interest in ending Rwandan-backed aggression in the war in eastern DRC. Without objection, that full statement will be a part of the record, and then the Rwandans, through their distinguished ambassador, write, Rwanda extends its profound gratitude to President Trump and his administration for prioritizing the Rwanda-DRC peace process, and then points out that the accords represent serious progress towards permanent stability, security, prosperity in the Great Lake regions. And they thank everyone from Secretary Rubio, starting with President Trump, Vance, Masoud Bulus, and others for making this possible. Again, beautiful statements in large part. We're asking that they just implement them, be true to your word. And let me just ask you, if I could, the church groups, and I meet with the church groups all the time, both countries. Senko, I've met with them for decades. They, there's a great deal of faith in each of these countries, people who really do believe in God, and they do believe in the power of forgiveness and mercy and reconciliation, maybe most of all, reconciliation, because that's needed more than anything else. I wonder how well we are working with them to try to get them, the church groups, to do more. I remember meeting many times with Rick Warren from the Saddleback Church, who had a very strong personal relationship with Kagame. And Jim Inhofe, the senator, he used to tell me how he would pray with President Kagame. We sometimes disagreed, but I would say, peace, just tell him there's more that could be done. And the onus does lie with him and the other president, Takashedi, to do more. And I'm wondering, if others, Senator Rounds, I know, has a good, robust relationship with Paul Kagame. I think the more people who are raising the issue that they listen to. Maybe they listen to our subcommittee, maybe not. Maybe they listen to me or my good friend, Ms. Jacobs. But we're not going to go away, and they won't go away. They may have a particular influence on saying, let's end the hostilities and end the atrocities, and it can happen. I can't thank you enough for your leadership, and again, the president, as is noted in this one statement from DR Congo, first president. I remember arguing with the Clinton administration repeatedly about how they missed it on the atrocities being committed with the genocide. And then even after it was all over, so-called, there were people following people into the bush to kill them. We had very, very good witnesses come in and tell us how Refugees International, for example, it's not over. They're hunting people down still. Why is Washington turning the page? So I don't think the page at all will be turned here and until there is peace. And then we need to sustain that peace and that prosperity as best we can. So, and I'm wondering, we know that both sides agree that the FDLR is a problem. Who benefits from the status quo? Maybe you could speak to that. And again, I can't ask enough that the faith community, I remember having meetings in South Sudan repeatedly with the president there about how it was excluding the church, and they had all these ideas on how they could promote peace and reconciliation, and they had an arm's length approach with Salva Kiir, or he had it with them. I said, please, Mr. President, you have an asset here in the church community that is second to none. They love people, even those who persecute them. Why not utilize their good offices? So I hope that that's being done very robustly. Bring them into that. I know you are, but whatever more could be done, and get more of our members of Congress who have these personal relationships with people like Kagame to do more. And so if you could speak to that, then I'll yield to my ranking member and to Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you're absolutely right. We greatly appreciate your efforts and the efforts of everyone who has contacts with both DRC and Rwandan representatives to please echo the call for implementation of the Washington Accords. That's the most important thing we can do, is to continue to draw attention to the promises that were made to President Trump and enforce the importance of implementation. So I would say your point on faith-based groups, we of course recognize and appreciate the important role that faith organizations play in both the DRC and Rwanda. I think that they will play a very important role in upcoming national dialogues, and we certainly hope that through the African Union's efforts especially, their voices can be incorporated along with civil society and political opposition to create a real, genuine conversation where we can discuss the governance issues that we hope to resolve, especially in Eastern DRC. And the governance issues will be obviously discussed in the Doha track as well in future negotiations. I would say also that faith-based groups are very important in our foreign assistance implementation. We obviously work very closely with several groups in the DRC and really appreciate their support as we continue to deliver this life-saving assistance. I would also say, to your point about the FDLR, the FDLR is a legitimate threat. We certainly are not denying that. They cannot be allowed to operate in Eastern DRC. So we are certainly emphasizing to the DRC government that neutralizing the FDLR, as they have committed under these agreements, is absolutely essential, and we need to see more steps taken to do that. Now, while the FDLR is a legitimate threat, we do not consider the advance that we have seen from M23 backed by the RDF to be targeted at really neutralizing the FDLR. It has gone beyond the areas where we would see that interaction. So we, while we recognize the importance of neutralizing the FDLR, we must say that that is more a matter of the DRC not fully implementing its obligations under the agreements, but this recent advance that we have seen with RDF involvement has been a breach of Rwanda's obligations. So there's a difference in how we're handling those two issues.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Ms. Jacobs?
Thank you. So I appreciate that civil society was consulted on the brief, but I think it's really important that they are actually included in the peace processes itself, and especially as the United States is making deals under the Strategic Partnership Agreement. The brief alone is not enough. Now I'd like to turn to the humanitarian crisis. In late December, the Trump administration announced a $2 billion commitment through the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, for humanitarian operations in 17 crisis-affected countries, including DRC. Ms. Troutman, given the crisis in DRC and President Trump's attention to the conflict, what portion of this OCHA funding will be used in DRC?
Thanks for the opportunity to discuss the OCHA mechanism. We're very excited about this new and innovative way to deliver foreign assistance. We think that under the OCHA mechanism, we'll be able to respond more flexibly to crises that arise around the world and be more strategic in how we are obligating foreign assistance through the pooled funding mechanisms. While we have seen the high-level obligation to OCHA from the U.S. government, I'm not aware that we've set country-specific levels, so I look forward to keeping in touch with your staff on that issue as we get more clarity.
Okay, and given the depth of need in DRC and other countries, does the administration anticipate or foresee making additional contributions this year?
I would say that the DRC certainly remains a strategic priority for U.S. assistance. We remain committed to supporting populations in need and understand that that underpins our economic and security priorities. So we certainly remain committed to providing assistance in the DRC.
Okay, so I guess you will tell me that you do not currently have the details to share what specific humanitarian programs, including funding levels, are ongoing in Eastern DRC right now?
So I'll say that we, over the past year, have provided $191 million in life-saving assistance in the DRC. That contribution makes the U.S. Contributes 30% of the humanitarian response in DRC, according to those numbers. So
Can you send over the specific programs and dollar amounts?
we can get you more information on that.
Thank you. And then I also wanted to turn to peacekeeping. I know Chairman Smith asked a few questions, but as you know, the Trump administration cut FY25 funding for UN peacekeeping operations by nearly 50% in 2 rescissions packages. Because of these funding shortfalls, the UN has been forced to reduce troop levels for all UN missions, including MONUSCO, by 25%. The FY26 funding bill recently passed by the House would restore funding for UN peacekeeping operations. Given the importance of MONUSCO to stability in Eastern DRC, is the administration committed to providing full funding for the mission?
Thank you so much for the chance to address MONUSCO funding. As I mentioned, the Secretary did provide funding for MONUSCO this year, and we look forward to continuing.
Full funding?
We did fulfill the U.S. obligation, I believe, this past year, and we certainly remain committed to assessing the mission. As I mentioned, we're very excited that its new mandate provides specific support to the Washington Accords, and we look forward to supporting the mission being more targeted and strategic in how it advances that objective.
And are you committed to making sure that MONUSCO is not forced to continue operating with significantly reduced capacity?
We certainly remain committed to ensuring that MONUSCO can fulfill its mandate properly. We are very concerned, obviously, about the constraints that it faces in terms of access. Even if it was at full levels, the obstruction that we see is really unacceptable. So while we are supportive of its mandate, we recognize that it has not been able to fulfill it. So we are determining how we can best strategically support MONUSCO in fulfilling its mandate in whatever way we see best.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I was just going to make one more comment too. I think is important to just highlight is, I think the big winner in all of this, the entity that comes out on top is China. And I think this happens all over the world, as a matter of fact, and it happens a lot in Africa. That China thrives in this environment where there's a lack of physical security and there's a lot of corruption. And I think that describes Eastern DRC, for the last few decades at least. But I think China's taken advantage of it, and I think they've taken advantage of the people in the DRC. And I just wanted to know, are we actively engaging with President Sheikh Hashedi and with the other government officials in Kinshasa about the problems with the Chinese? I would refer to it, I wrote it down here as strategic corruption, because they will promote this instability because it keeps their competitors, Western investment out of these areas. And so until we get past some of that, we need to do that. And I've talked to some American companies that were in the DRC that were subject to this where they had regulatory burdens put on them. They had overwhelming, unreasonable taxation on their businesses, and some of it was being driven by relationships with the Chinese, with the government in Kinshasa, to promote some of that, to kind of eliminate them as competition. So I think many of my colleagues here have asked, how do we get some of these Western countries, the United States and some of our other allies, to come in and invest in the DRC and invest in become good business partners with the DRC. I think that until we address some of this stuff, it's also exceedingly difficult to do that. So have we had conversations about that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Congressman, for the chance to elaborate a bit more on the strategic partnership agreement that the U.S. made with the DRC, because it addresses all of these issues. So we know that Chinese companies have a vast majority of ownership over critical mineral assets in the DRC, especially copper and cobalt assets, and those are critical for U.S. supply chain security, especially important for our efforts to be dominant in emerging technology and to supply the defense industrial base. So part of the strategic agreement, the strategic partnership agreement with the DRC is aimed at making sure that U.S. companies have preferential access to strategic assets in the DRC, which we will work with the DRC to designate. So the purpose of that is to get U.S. companies in the door, prevent Chinese companies from taking over more of these assets, and to make sure that the offtake is coming to the United States to reduce our reliance on the refined minerals coming from China. So certainly this agreement is aimed at reasserting U.S. dominance in the critical minerals sector, also making sure that the DRC is able to profit from its resources, because as you said, Chinese companies often have the lowest standards. They're exploiting the system, they're exploiting corruption, and we certainly don't want to see that. It's bad for U.S. companies trying to invest. It's bad for the people of the DRC. So we are looking forward to implementing this agreement to really cement the opportunities for U.S. companies in the DRC and in these critical mineral supply chains, and also to make sure that China's influence is reduced. And on the issue of corruption, part of the strategic partnership agreement also addresses regulatory issues, making sure that the DRC's mining sector is cleaned up so that U.S. companies can be more confident when they're investing, and that the regulations are easier to navigate. So all of this is aimed at the exact issue that you raised, and that we are very concerned with how embedded Chinese companies are in the DRC.
Well, thank you. And when I travel to anywhere in Africa, I make the point, anywhere in the world for that matter, because China, with their Belt and Roads program, is all over the place. But I make a point to everybody that the U.S. is a much better partner than the Chinese. We're there to if we make agreements, regarding the natural resources, we're paying for them, and we're paying appropriately for them. We're not robbing these countries of some of their natural resources, which I think is what the Chinese do. But I do think that, like I said before, I think once we get in a situation where we start getting some investment in there, it has to stay in the Eastern DRC. The money does. The vast majority of it has to, people that live and work there, or that would like to work there but live there, have to see the infrastructure building up around this, and they have to see their lives getting better, or quite honestly, it's just not gonna survive long term. So with that, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Just on that point briefly, then we'll conclude the hearing. I've had 5 hearings on the issue of cobalt coming out of DR Congo. We've had numerous people, and Ed Royce, my friend and colleague, was very active in trying to promote the idea of, hey, child labor, 35,000 approximately children are being forced into these mines and dying, in some cases getting very sick, and about 200,000 adults who are under very coercive restraints by the Chinese Communist Party, who run these. And then where does the cobalt go? It goes to Xinjiang. I chair the China Commission. We've had hearings there too. Xinjiang, where the Uyghurs are being so horribly repressed and oppressed, and then it comes here. Now, if we're going to have cars that use cobalt, fine, but don't do it on the backs of children and forced labor. And so our bill, which again I hope is moot because of this agreement, would provide a rebuttable presumption that anything coming out of DRC that goes to China has been tainted with slave labor and child labor, and therefore is inadmissible to the United States. We got a major portion of it, like I said before, passed in the Ways and Means Committee. But if all this fails, we're right back to doing that. And we also have a strategy embedded in the bill because we want the people in DR Congo to enjoy the fruits of all of that richness that they have and let them be blessed with it. Not the Chinese Communist Party that's using it to build out their military capabilities and to oppress maybe Taiwan next, certainly Hong Kong and their own people. So, this is so important that this prevail. And again, we want the people of DR Congo to benefit. Whether it be with a friendly African country or some other true democracy, that's where you do the processing with safeguards that protect not just those who mine it, but those who process it later. You don't have that with China. It just doesn't exist under a dictatorship. So thank you. And I want to thank my friend and colleague for raising those kinds of important issues. I want to thank you, Secretary Troutman, for your valuable testimony, for your very clear and well-informed answers. And to the members of our committee, including our distinguished ranking member, Ms. Jacobs, for asking her good questions as well. The members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for the witness, and we will ask you to respond to these in writing if you would. Pursuant to committee rules, all members may have 5 days to submit statements, questions, and extraneous materials for the record, subject to the length limitations, and without objection, the committee stands adjourned.
The near deserve to live without the fear. Peace is human right. Peace is human right. Human right, human right. Yeah.